Team language is a term that Dr. Kim uses often in our podcasts. It's a great counseling concept, but today I want to hear more about how it plays out in real life in real marriage. I've heard too many couples stuck in a blame cycle, and let's be honest, I'm prone to that too. So today we're going to bring the idea of team language out of the idea zone and into reality so that we can see how this practically plays out in marriage. So, Dr. Kim, first of all, let's start with what are some examples of language that is not team language?
Like because I love sports, so the sports example came to my mind. If you can tell if a team is united, if they're connected or not, and if
Mm,
you've got a group of individuals that each one wants to think they're more important than the others, and they're not really working with it's all about me, then visually we don't see team language because that team's never going to do that good. They're just
mm,
not. There's going to be too much other junk going along. So I think anything for in marriage any language that would separate us. We talk about selfishness a lot. Certainly,
mhm,
that is not anything that goes along with that. I want my way. I want to do it this way. Criticism that's not constructive, not said in the right way. So you're very critical of your spouse. You're just you're really a bad dad, or you're really a bad mom, or I can't believe you tell people that you read the Bible every day. I haven't seen you pick up your Bible in months, or just people can be just cruel.
mm,
Conditional love, that certainly is team language. In other words, you've
mm,
got to do something for me to show love to you or acceptance to you. Any of the stuff where we're blaming our spouse all the time, we're doing name calling, and I think we think about a lot of it with just the verbal things we do, but body language and tone of voice has a huge part in communicating, not team language. You can give each other looks or stares or body language that just says, get away from me. You are not part of my team. And
mhm.
all of those things are going to be very detrimental to the whole idea of trying to make your marriage, or look at your marriage like you're a team. You're just throwing hand grenades at it.
Yeah. Ouch. Those
Yeah,
were those were
they
those
hurt.
were intense, intense examples. Yeah, that's good. That's the thing I think of is I think of like assuming negative intent. So
Mm,
on a team, you know that your teammate has your back. So, we just went to a basketball game with my kids the other night, a UNCW basketball game, and just watching how the team, like the synergy of always like they're always looking out for each other. They're always looking for that pass or that assist and how to help out. I'm not sure if I use that term correctly,
was
assist.
that's good.
But just you can see it. You're right. Like you were saying, Dr. Kim, you can see it on the court. They're actually looking out for each other. They're always looking around. If they're good, that is, not just looking for their own
Yeah.
chance to score.
No, I think basketball is such a good example because there's just five people out there anyway. And if you see the guy that has the ball, he's not looking to pass to someone. He's
Mm-mm.
always trying to figure out how do I get open and make my shot. So I'm the high scorer on the team. And eventually the other guys on the team are go, they're not gonna pass him the ball if they get it, for one thing, because he's not giving it back. And so
Mhm.
then you just begin to see it break down. And I think the same kind of things happen in marriage.
Yeah.
If you're hogging everything, or it's just not going to work.
Mhm. Mhm. So, yeah, and one specific marriage example I think of is when you're just assuming your spouse isn't there for you, you're, like, kind
Yes.
of thinking, I've done this, I think, a lot with unspoken expectations. If I've not spoken something that I really wanted to see done, and maybe I thought, "Oh, he should know," or, "He should understand that I would want this," or,
Sure.
"Why wouldn't he just go ahead and do those dishes? They're bothering me." Well, they're not bothering him, and I didn't ask, And so to take that and personalize and go, "Oh, he didn't do the dishes because he wanted to make me mad," would be the opposite of team, to assume that that was a negative action toward
Yeah,
me.
that's really good. It's kind of a negative interpretation out of
Mhm.
something that was not meant to be
Mhm.
negative at all. And I think you had another good point there. I think sometimes we think our spouse should just know,
Mhm.
and most of the time we don't. I mean, I
Mhm.
think there's some things I know Nancy wants me to do and stuff, but it's she needs to tell me too,
Yeah.
because if she thinks, well, he loves me that much, he's just going to know. And like my mind may be a million miles from there, just like you said
Mhm.
with the dishes in the sink. You
Mhm.
want them done. That's important to you. Brian may be thinking, oh, I got to do this and get the kids, or I've got to finish the
Mhm.
sermon notes, or this or that. And
Mhm.
so that you can look right at him and it never registers. And it's like you think, He looked at that and said, "I'm not doing that. Lindsay's going to do that. I'm going to do what I want to do," which
Right.
probably didn't happen at all,
Right.
but we can kind of get into that because, yeah, we have one of our counselors in our counseling center. She and her husband have a deal that I think is worked great for them. Says if it bothers you, do it. In other words, if there's
Mm.
socks in the middle of the floor, it doesn't matter whose they are. If it bothers you,
Mhm.
pick them up, put it in the hamper. If the counter has crumbs on it, bothers you, get a whatever sponge and get
Mhm.
the crumbs off, which I thought was good because I think it's a lot about taking personal responsibility. It takes the whole blaming thing out of it. It takes that
Mm.
angry emotion. I can't believe this is the 10th time this week they've left their socks in the middle of the floor. No, it's
Mhm.
just like picking them up and that's it. And you let it go. Anyway, I don't know that worked for everybody, but I loved it. I thought it was a great idea and it worked great for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's really smart, and they've communicated it really clearly, so that
Yes.
makes it
Yeah.
then it becomes a team culture issue of, like, they both have the same understanding.
Exactly. They're working
Yeah,
together.
exactly, yes. They got the same playbook. Let's keep it in
Ex-
the team zone.
that's right. Exactly. Exactly.
That's good. That's good, and I feel like what I've seen a lot personally just with, with conversations with friends and different people is it's really easy to get stuck in that, you should have done this. I wanted you to do that. Or, thinking about things, like you said, unspoken expectations, or thinking our spouse should be a mind reader, instead of making it something that we work on together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's good.
So, Dr. Kim, what are some examples of team language?
I think it's really a mindset shift
Mm-hmm.
from me to we. It's
Mm.
because I think the selfish is all about me, but then I change that to we, and so I'm making we statements about I'm talking about us together doing things, or us planning that, or us working out this thing together, whatever. It's kind of speaking into our marriage for both
Mm.
of us to use that we terminology, trusting each other, knowing we're going to stand together no matter what it is, that we're going to have each other's back. I mean, all of those kind of things, I think, build that team. It's like, okay, this person is going to wear the same jersey that I'm wearing the rest of our life
Mm.
together.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I look at couples, I'm thinking, you've got on such different jerseys. You're not only different
Mm-hmm.
teams, you're different leagues. I mean, you've got to you got in the same league first
Mm-hmm.
of wanting to build a Christian marriage, and then you put on the same team jerseys and live life that way. And I think that visual that I thought of just really helped me to see we are wearing the same jersey. She is not my enemy. If I do
Mm-hmm.
something, she does something. It's like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's work
Mm-hmm.
this out. Not what in the heck are you doing that for? Or saying
Mm-hmm.
something can make Nancy get defensive, or she says something and make me get defensive. No, it's like, okay, I don't understand this. So help me understand. Let's talk about this. And that's the way you continue to build that team culture, which
Mm-hmm.
you said is part of that culture that you build. That we're not going to negative interpret things.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna ask questions, and we're gonna always see this is my teammate, and what we're doing is for the greater good of our marriage and our relationship with each other and with God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Also heard something else in there, Dr. Kim. You said you gave an example of, like, basically accusing. Why would you do this? Why did you do that? And I think that's so easy to jump into that. It's so easy to
Yeah,
go there.
because it's like, I don't understand that. I wouldn't do that. So why would you do that?
Right.
Well, I'm not Nancy, and she's
Mhm.
not me. And so, and I think for me, I love the way you said that because it really doesn't matter why.
Mhm.
It really matters that the
Mhm.
fact that Nancy said that and it was important to her, and I need
Mhm.
to figure out what my response is to her, not
Mhm.
think, well, that was the dumbest thing in the world. Why would you say that?
Right.
Which
Right.
we get into sometimes, or we
Right.
discount it. It's like they said that, well, isn't that cute? I'm gonna pat him on the head and I'm gonna go
Mm.
somewhere else, or whatever. Just kind
Mhm.
of just brush it off, which doesn't help at
Mhm.
all either.
No, no.
Not at all.
Yeah. So I think I've heard you use some kind of, like, lead-ins to how a couple could address things using team language, and some of the things I've heard you say are, you could go to your spouse and say, "I would love for us to
Hmm.
do this," or, "Can we work together on something?" So kind of getting that terminology where it's not, "Why did you do this? What's wrong with you? What are you thinking?" None of those things, but instead, "Hey, I'm feeling like we're disconnected. What can we do to work together to grow our connection?" I think that's something I've heard you talk a lot about on the
Yeah,
podcast, and it's a huge shift.
I think it is, and I think Nancy and I have to work on it. was talking to somebody about this recently. I don't think it was on a podcast, but we really had gotten the bad habit of getting our phones again in the car, where we had kind of made this commitment. We're not, and we're going to use that time to talk like we used to. And I think it just kind of gradually went back in. Maybe I had to make a call to a patient, or Nancy got a call from in her real estate business, and then we just kind of got lax, and we were at a stoplight, and I was driving, looked over, she's on the phone, and I said, and I tried not to accuse. I didn't think I did. But I said, we got to get back to what we were doing. Remember we made that commitment? Remember the difference it made? And she said, yes, but I'm doing this. I said, I know, but we decided there's not going to be yes buts unless it's an emergency. And she said, okay, let's get back to doing that. So that's what we've been doing the last month, probably again. And it makes a difference. It's just, but it was being a team again. It was like we were two people sitting in the front seat of a car separate, like there was a big glass barrier between us, and putting the phones down, talking, engaging, made us a team. It was like, and I think it's, we talk about touch points, we talk about looking for those opportunities to connect with your spouse. And when you're in the car together, now sometimes like you and Brian may never be in the car together by yourself with all the kids you got running around.
Not often right now.
But if you were, you want to take advantage of that time together.
Well, and I love the way you approach that too, that you didn't say, Nancy, what are you thinking over there? Like, why are you doing this again? I actually heard someone say this, it's a joke, but that 90% of marriage is telling your spouse to get off the phone, when it's a time you don't want them on the phone, but then when you're on it,
it's like, this is important.
But instead of just going like, stop what you're doing, I'm sure that's not important, making it a we thing. I mean, I'm sure it would have gone over a little differently if you had just barked at her.
Nancy's going to get defensive. And once we get in that defensive mode with our spouse, the next thing that either one of us says is probably not going to be good or helpful.
No, that's absolutely true.
And so, and that worked out really well. I wish everything I tried to communicate did that well. It did. That one worked.
Well, then you can teach us about it because
Well, I think it's just deciding if this is really important, to make sure that we're a team and we do that 24/7. What stands in the way of doing that? And okay, what do we need to do to get that barrier out of the way? And you work on it together as a team. And so then you're working on it together. It wasn't like you put your phone and when you're driving, I can look on my phone.
Right.
No, it was like, no, I'm not going to look at my phone either. And it was funny. We were coming back from one of the kids, a volleyball tournament. And so then we decided we want to cook that night. And Nancy, we were going to order dinner someplace. And we were close to that place. And she goes, do you want to just get dinner from so-and-so? I said, yeah, they're great. She said, do you mind if I use my phone to call the order in? And we laughed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great use of phone in the car.
Yes.
So how have you seen team language make a difference for couples?
I think they're more connected. I think, one of the verses that kind of started that we used a lot in the early days of awesome marriage were Ecclesiastes 4:12, two are better than one. And so when we begin to see that we really are better together, that we both bring unique gifts and abilities, that we complement each other's strengths, we strengthen each other's weaknesses, those kind of things. And then it's like, whatever it is, let's figure this out. We are one now in that sense. We are the team, not the same, but we're the team now. Right. So let's figure this out. And so that's where I think it makes a difference. You're connected, you're working together, and you get to that point where you realize no matter what comes up, with God's help, we can fight it. We can overcome it. And that's a really good place to get to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's really good. And I like too that you brought up like that you're not the same as you would be if you were just one person. It's not like the Kim show or the Nancy show. It's both of you guys together. Because together you can do a lot more than one could do alone. You are that, cord of three strands not easily broken, that you have more, I'm sorry, that was that back half of the Ecclesiastes verse. So two are better than one, cord of three strands not easily broken. Like you have a lot more going on together. And I think that's kind of why it's hard, because you're syncing up two different approaches, two different personalities. But in the end, if you can do that well, you're going to be able to do things one alone could never do.
Yeah, sometimes when I teach, I talk about the cord of three strands, and I've got
Mhm.
this thing that's on a hook, and it's got a red string, I think a blue string, and a white string, and they're just all sitting there, or not strings, they're ropes. And so, just as I talk about coming together, being a team, and I'll just kind of weave that together, where at the end I can pull it, and how strong it is
Mhm.
because they're all three together now. And I think that's the process. We don't,
Mhm.
I don't think when you get married, you're there. I
Mhm.
think it's as you go through marriage and God molds you, you kind of, okay, now we're going to make this weave, and then something else, make this weave, and eventually get it where you're very, very tight together with
Mm.
God, and you're not three ropes anymore, you're one rope. And I think
Mhm.
that's my goal for our marriage, is for us
Mhm.
to as much as we can to stay in that realm where this three strands make up one rope.
Mhm. That's really
Like
good.
that.
Yeah. That's powerful because nothing's gonna break you, apart after you put in that much time and work to work together.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Mm.
And yeah, I think you kind of look at it just as, our marriage is a journey, and
Mhm.
there's gonna be good days and bad days and ups and downs, but altogether is what really molds it into something, um, as each year passes.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So, working together to build that, and then one thing I love that you said a minute ago too is that it's just kind of a way to get out of defensiveness.
Hmm.
Because I've seen a lot of couples, and I've experienced this too, just having defensiveness kind of stop us before we start. It keeps us out of progress and out of building our marriage. And I think maybe I'm seeing that a lot in my stage of life where like our peers are going through just busyness. A lot of busyness makes it kind of you're distracted a lot. You don't have
Hmm.
lots of great talking time. So when you bring stuff up, maybe you wait until it really bugs you and then it comes out all messy.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate that you did that yesterday or something like that. And so I think there's a lot of the defensiveness that just kind of stays kind of at a simmer. Um, but I
Yeah.
love what you're talking about is getting past that. It's just kind of taking you right past that to a really proactive kind of building position in marriage.
Yeah, and I think the more we can look at things like that, how you describe defensiveness as a red flag,
Mm,
and do something about it, because I think we see red flags, a lot of us, and we ignore it. And I have couples tell me that in counseling all the time. Well, yeah, we knew this
mm,
was a problem, or I knew this was a problem, but we just never did anything about it. So you see the red flag. The
mhm,
key then is to do something about it,
mhm.
and make it that red flag in your rearview mirror and not still in front of you.
Yeah, that's a great point. Don't ignore
Yeah,
that thing.
exactly.
Gosh. Yeah. Well, so, okay, how does this concept that we're talking about of team language go along with the idea of the pivot that you talk about?
I think, the pivot, when I kinda came up with that, when we were doing Seven Secrets stuff,
Mhm,
it was kind of the perfect visual about conflict. And
mhm,
it basically, the pivot is that most of us stand facing each other, and we put the problem between us. And so then it's like, how is Kim gonna solve the problem? How does Nancy wanna solve the problem? And then we fight over how we're gonna solve the problem, because we look at it differently. We're looking at it from my perspective and her perspective.
mhm,
And the pivot is just taking that face to face and turn it where you're standing side by side. Now the problem's in front of you. Now you've got room to put God in between the two of you instead of the problem, to be there with you. And then together as a team, you're solving the problem. And instead of it's being how Nancy should solve it or I should solve it, it's how does this problem need to be solved? And we
mhm,
approach it together as a team. So it works out really well. The pivot, I think, works out really well with that whole concept
mhm,
of a team. And it's all of a sudden we're not fighting over the problem. We're fighting together to solve the problem, to resolve the
mhm.
problem, whatever that is.
Yeah, that's so good. That's really good. So, do you have any examples of how this has helped your marriage?
Oh, I think, let's see. I think in parenting,
Mm,
I we have well, our goals all overall for the parenting were always the same for our kids,
mhm,
of what we really wanted for them. How we got there was different,
mhm,
and so I was, the lesser disciplinarian. And so if there was something with the kids, like we're a great athlete, Julie was a good athlete, but if I was coaching Grant's team and he did something and Nancy grounded him, and I had a big game on that Saturday, and
Oh,
he's supposed to be
no.
grounded.
No.
So what did I do? Of course, I took him. So
Mm,
the problem was, how to discipline him. She said he needs to lose something. He needs to
mhm,
lose a consequence that is going to impact him. He loves sports. This is a consequence I've enforced. And I'm saying, I think he deserves a consequence too, but I'm taking him the game. And
Mm,
so then if we come together and say, okay, how does this really work? What's going to be? And so we changed it to what's going to be the most effective
mm,
discipline in this
mhm.
situation. Not that Grant was a bad kid. I don't get that. This is just some stupid thing, probably. Maybe, but at that time it was big.
Right.
And so it's like, well, then we can come up with it together. What
Mhm.
really works is punishing him and his whole team a good idea? Is there something else that would be equally important? And maybe
Hmm.
we come back, he's grounded from that game. He doesn't get to play. Or maybe we come something else was better. But all of a sudden we're talking about the problem together
Mm.
instead of me thinking she's jerking my star player off of my team
Yeah.
and, that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of an example of, I think, how it would happen. And if we could stay fighting over that, we could stay mad at each other and be
Mhm.
tension all week until the game and then all that kind of stuff. Or we can say, let's back off and let's look at it together.
Yeah. That's a great example. You're speaking right into my season. It kind of hurts because I'm thinking of a situation where we, you're trying to parent on the fly and things keep happening and we like address something and then we kind of got at each other. And then the
Yeah.
kid who's like who we're trying to discipline was around and they're like, well, this isn't going great for you guys, but I think I'm doing okay.
Yeah, I'm
They're
winning.
like,
To do what I want. Right.
like, oh shoot, that
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
took a turn.
And
So
it's
I
normal
think,
for
yeah,
kids to want to get their way. I mean, we're the
sure,
parents that
yeah,
have to. I mean, that's not a bad
yeah,
thing that our kids want to get their way.
yeah.
It's our job to train them and do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, they're looking for any
That's funny.
opportunity. They're like, "How can we get
Absolutely.
me out of
Right.
the hot seat?"
Yep.
So, yeah, I think that's good too, and I think this concept of team language and being a team together, is a great reminder that marriage is not a competition. I know in our marriage, both of us are very competitive people, and I think that you and Nancy are very strong.
Yeah, we are.
You're not gonna hide a lot. You're not gonna keep a lot, hidden.
No.
You're just probably gonna get it out there.
Yep.
And so I think sometimes we need a constant reminder that we can be those competitive people, but we don't need to be competitive with each other. And it's weird how
Exactly.
sometimes it kind of slips into like a fight or argument that we feel like we're, going after each other. We need to remember we're not. That's not the what it's about at all.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And also that this is not like for us, we've been trying to adopt, just more and more of these principles as we go on. And it's not a one-time thing. It's a practice,
It
practice,
is.
practice.
Most of us have been in bad patterns for a long time. But
Hmm.
I think what I see in counseling, I've really seen it in our marriage, when you make a decision together to change, the change comes much quicker than it took the damage to take place. In other
Mm.
words, it just does, especially if you're
Hmm.
working on it together. And if you're giving each other permission to call each other out, hey, we're working on this and,
Hmm.
you know, um, whatever you did. And I don't think that's conducive to what we're trying to build. How do you feel about that? And then
Hmm.
you address it and you come back together.
Yeah, that's
Your
good.
process.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's also super encouraging because I know we think about like, the change won't happen overnight. That's not realistic. But it's encouraging to think that the healing could come faster than like,
Oh,
oh, it
yeah.
wasn't like we put 10 years into damaging, it takes 10 years to get better.
Right. No, no,
That would be discouraging.
no. I don't. Yeah, I wouldn't. That way, I'd have everybody I had in counseling would be there 5 years, 10
Ooh,
years, 20 years.
right.
So no, it doesn't
Long
take as
term.
long. Yes. Yeah.
And I think too, it's also a really good reminder that we're all sinful and we're all selfish.
Yeah.
And so just constantly knowing that, acknowledging that, not pretending like we're not, but just going before God and saying, you know what? I did it again. I screwed up. And then going back to our spouse, going back to each other. Um, kind of like you talked about, Dr. Kim, letting each other call each other out. We have to also let God convict us and just keep coming
Mm,
back with him
so good.
with the mindset of like, go ahead, search my heart, know me. I don't want to be that person I was. And that's going to help too.
Absolutely. Sometimes I think we don't like it, but we don't know what to do different. And I
Mhm.
think that's the point. It's really just being humble and going to God and
Mhm.
going to our spouse and say, I don't even know what to do, but I know
Mhm.
this isn't working and I want to do something different. So
Yeah.
counseling, talking to your pastor, there's some other first steps that could be great to help you break those patterns.
Mhm. Yeah, that's good. And you always tell us too to start with praying. Start with
Yes.
prayer. Yeah,
Always start with God.
it's good. So there are some situations where maybe it's harder to do this team thing. Like maybe with blended families or maybe dealing with in-laws? How do
Mm.
couples approach that?
Um, I think we always have to remember the relationship is God first, our spouse second. And
Mm,
so when we're dealing with those situations, blended family, in-laws, we got to keep that. We've got to stay on the same page and communicate as a we. If we're drawing boundaries, if
mm,
we're whatever it is. Yeah, because I've had couples I've worked with, and I've learned this to help them present it better, where they'll say, you give, say, the parents of the bride or the wife are just interfering all the time,
mhm,
and they see it as, no, we've always been involved with our daughter's life, and we're just there to help, blah blah blah. And so then you say, we're going to set a boundary. She communicates that, and they think, well, it's just because of him. She shouldn't
mm,
have married him in the first place anyway. No, it's got to be, no, this is what's for our marriage. This is what's best for our marriage. And we're doing this
mhm,
together, and we're a team in doing this. So I think those are some hard situations. I think
mhm,
some parents let their adult married children be themselves easier than others do.
mhm,
And some of them want it to continue to be in a meshed relationship with
mhm,
everybody instead of seeing, no, we're two different families now. We
mm,
still love each other. We're still in the same world, but we're separate in here. We're the
mhm,
moon and the sun going back and forth. And so I think that's it. I think blended families are tough anyway. And so I think if you're not on the same page and the kids don't see you on the same page, what I tell blended families, it's a lot about giving it time, not
mm,
trying to rush things, being patient with things, and being consistent and being
mhm,
fair. And I said those things alone will help you because they're going to look for unfairness. They're going to look, is he
mm,
buying something for his kids that he didn't give to us? Did he
mm.
spend 99 cents more on that present for
Oh
his
gosh.
kid than he did on my? You hear these things all the time.
Mm,
And so how do you help deal with that? And again, you're going to deal with it better and easier if you deal with it together. And once you get that team mindset, then it doesn't matter what comes up, you put it through that grid. And
mhm,
so if it is blended family, if it is in-laws, if it's one of those things that are difficult, it's not like we change positions when we get there. No, we're a team in that too. And so you
mhm,
just, once you get that mindset, everything begins to just naturally over time, I think, pass through that grid and said, how
mhm.
do we deal with this? Instead of, let your parents go
Right.
fix them, No,
Yeah. Yeah. That's not gonna go great.
no, no, no.
Yeah, that's good. That's good, and that's encouraging too. It's really hopeful. It's just like strengthening a muscle. It sounds like you're saying that as we start to practice it, it's gonna become more and more natural, and that's
Yeah, we
great to
talk about
hear.
muscle memory and stuff like that. I
Mhm.
think the same thing, and so much that we talk about on the brain and stuff like that of how you rewire yourself, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden it's not the me wiring up there, it's us wiring,
Mhm.
and it just becomes, oh, that what else would I do but
Yeah.
talk to Nancy about it,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and one thing I'm thinking of too is like I think it's so hard maybe at the beginning of marriage or like you said with blended families just to give it time. I think it's hard at first to even see where like maybe I'm throwing my spouse under the bus without even knowing it, by
Mm,
saying, "Oh, he doesn't want to, so we can't." And we've experienced this with friends too where you're like, "No, she doesn't want to go out, so we're not going to go out." And I'm like, "Well, don't say it was me. Just say we decided."
yeah, exactly.
And there's something about that, it just feels it's so much better to be unified and not just be, "Well, gosh, she wouldn't let him come out." That doesn't
It
feel good for anyone.
it is, and it keeps one person from being the bad guy and the other good guy.
Yes.
You don't wanna get in
Yes.
that where, "Oh, I
No.
would go with you out with y'all every night to dinner if you asked me. I would
Right.
love to go, but
Right.
he won't." And so,
Oh,
yeah,
yes, terrible.
but we're just, sometimes I think we wanna be seen as the good guy too,
Mm.
and that's a whole different
Ooh.
probably podcast, but I think we can get into that too, and so then we
Mm.
throw our spouse under the bus just so it makes us look good. That's not
Ooh,
good. That's
yikes.
not being a team.
Yeah, I'm gonna jot that down for a podcast idea because that is
It's like,
stepping on my
yeah.
toes already.
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
dad said no Fortnite today, guys. Yeah, that's not team language, is it?
No,
No.
it's not.
Yeah. So, okay, so I love that this ties into the last secret in your book, 7 Secrets to an Awesome Marriage. What are your top tips for adopting a team mindset in marriage?
I think the whole idea of the last chapter is fight, and it's the power of fighting together on the same team. It's kind of what
Mhm.
we talked about with the cord of three strands. So I
Mhm.
think the way we do that consistently, I think prayer, I think praying together, I think listening well to each other, seeking to understand each other,
Hmm.
accepting each other, making sure that all conflict is resolved, having fun together, and we see sex as a we thing. It's not me trying to be satisfied or Nancy. It's a we thing. How do we make
Mm.
this in a culture that gives us so many mixed message on sex something that is designed by God, which is so much better than anything the world does. So I think
Mm.
all those go in, and it's just those are that's the foundation you want to have as to have that teamwork in your marriage. And it's so much fun. I mean, once you begin to get there and get some glimpses of it, it is just like, I know she always has my back, always.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
that's a really good feeling.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going out after your life alone. You're working together.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
good. Yeah, that's really good. And one other way I can think of is just simply self-awareness.
Mhm.
I think sometimes it takes time to cultivate self-awareness and to think through what we're doing and why we're doing it. And we have an awesome self-check-in guide that could really help with that. It's kind of a guide for reflecting on what you're doing, why you're doing it, what you're feeling, yeah, how you're dealing with it. And I think that can be really helpful in not having things just kind of come out sideways.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they can get that on the website, right? Under
Yeah,
resources,
absolutely. Yeah, and
awesomemarriage.com.
we'll link that in the show notes
Because
as
that is
well.
a great, and just to
Good one.
plug you and the other ones that create content, we have so many good resources that are so helpful in so many different ways. Some are deeper than others, some are fun, but they all go into what we see as building an awesome marriage.
Yeah, for sure. And talking about a team mindset, we have everyone on the team has such different gifts. Christina wrote this check-in guide, and I remember reading it over and going, "Wow, this is amazing. I wouldn't have thought of these questions." Which probably means I need to use the guide more often. It's very, very good and thorough and practical. It's a great, great tool.
Yeah, I think we're, and not to get off of that, but I think the our team at Awesome Marriage is truly a team, and I think we
Mhm.
see that we are all see each other's gifts and abilities, and we're all for the same thing, and we're all fighting for the same thing, and that's Awesome Marriages everywhere that honor
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, absolutely. And no one person could do the work that the team does.
No,
That's not even
no,
reasonable to think of. So,
I tried it for a while and I was
right.
dying.
Sounds exhausting.
It was like, oh no,
Gosh.
yeah.
All right. Well, Dr. Kim, I've really enjoyed hearing you unpack this concept of team language today. Do you have any final piece of advice on this topic?
I just love this topic because in counseling and friends, the people I see that are a team and they stand out, and it's so good, and it's
Mm,
such a way to make our marriage great. It
hmm
was, I think, the cord of three. That was God's design from day one. We see it in the garden with He and Adam and Eve spending
hmm
time every day. There was a team approach, and so if you're not a team, what's keeping you from being a team? And
mm,
what are the barriers there that you need to work on together to make that happen? And it may be that you take your first step together is prayer. And then you begin to talk about this. What are we doing that makes us not a team? How do we eliminate that? And then what are the things we want to do that really solidify us as a team together in our marriage?
hmm.
Go buy some cheap jerseys that are the same team
There
and
you
just
go.
start wearing them around the house all the time. Just
There
have
you
that
go.
visual like, oh, that's not my enemy walking in here, even though they're frowning. That's my teammate.
Yeah, that's great. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Kim, thanks for sharing all these thoughts. It's been super helpful. And I'm really encouraged by our conversation today. If you're listening and you've enjoyed this podcast, please do us a favor and leave us a rating and review of this podcast wherever you listen. It really helps other couples to find the podcast when you leave a review to let people know about it. And that's really our goal, is that more couples would know about God's plan for marriage, have hope, and be encouraged to take steps to grow their marriage and build an awesome marriage. If you need anything at all, don't ever hesitate to reach out to us at info@awesomemarriage.com. We love hearing from you and chatting with you. Have a great day and do something awesome for your marriage today.